Live?
It's live.
At ISHI Live? ISHI Live, ISHI 35. Hi there, Christy. I'm Travis. It's nice to meet you.
Very nice to meet you.
Christy, can you tell me a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Yeah, sure. So I am an associate professor at Baylor College of Medicine in Houston, and specifically I'm in the Center for Medical Ethics and Health Policy. So in that role, I spend most of my time doing grant-funded research and the remainder of my time on education.
Okay, are you actually teaching or you're just working with the education portion?
No, I teach as well. So
Okay.
I'm the director of what's called our health policy pathway at Baylor.
Okay. Can you tell me, what is the health policy pathway? What are you aiming for with that policy?
So the pathway, we have many pathways at Baylor, and it's really just for students to who want to pick an area, a specialized area that they want to go deeper on. And so health policy is a popular area, especially these days. So the students become competent in understanding healthcare structure and financing and various laws and policies relevant to the delivery of healthcare.
Okay, so are these med students or is this on the administrative side of things?
They are all medical students,
Med
yes.
students, okay. Side note, my son's in UW-Madison for med school.
Oh, fantastic,
I don't know
yeah.
if he has this kind of program there. I'm sure
Yeah,
he does.
yeah.
He's just doing a lot of studying right now because it's his first
I'm
year.
sure.
So do you interact with the students on a daily basis and help guide them towards these different pathways?
So I do a lot of providing information to the students about the pathway. And then I'm also a co-director of a seminar class, which is in the pathway. And so I do interact closely with the students around that class.
So is there a genetic analysis or identification aspect to this world that the prospective doctors could go into?
So there is a genetics and genomics pathway at Baylor. And in the health policy pathway, we do touch on some topics related to genetics, and in particular explore ethical, legal, and social implications of those technologies.
That is a really good point, because I was talking to some other folks today and they're talking about there are times when bodies need to be exhumed, like if that person is an unknown, a doe. And, you know, I would imagine that somebody has to realize and understand the ethics and the legality of all of that. Is that something that you guys would touch on?
So no, not in the pathway. However, in the pathway, I do provide a session that describes my research around this technique known as investigative genetic genealogy, or IGG for short, or FIGG. It goes by various names. We're talking about the same thing. And I provide that to the students as an example of a research agenda focused on policy outcomes, policy solutions, really.
Yeah. So in doing that kind of investigative work, is that something that I'm not aware? Do the DNA doe people do that kind of investigation? Is that what people are doing in that world? Do you know?
So IGG practitioners are doing the genetic genealogy work and working closely with law enforcement, or in some cases law enforcement themselves are doing the genetic genealogy work that comprises this technique, IGG.
That's excellent. What in the world got you into this pathway of yourself for your life?
Right.
How did you choose this?
How does a professor at a medical school get so involved in IGG policy?
Yeah.
So our center, again, it's the Center for Medical Ethics and Health Policy. We have a history of doing what's called LC research, and LC stands for ethical, legal, and social implications. And that term can apply to many kinds of technologies, but it specifically applies to genetic technologies. So our group had been doing LC research before 2018. In 2018, Joseph DeAngelo was identified as the Golden State Killer, and given our past work in this space, we immediately took notice. And we conducted a U.S. general population survey to begin to understand what the public's views are of this technique, and that launched us into a whole research agenda that was ultimately funded by the National Institutes of Health.
That's very interesting, and I'm wondering, in the world of genetics and genealogy, how do you convince a person such as myself to maybe give a sample, or because that's really how you build better tools to find and help the genetics world. How do you convince people to be willing to do that?
Yeah, so from where I sit, no one should have to be convinced,
Sure.
right? It is their decision,
Yes.
and it should be an informed decision.
Yes.
And so the individuals whose DNA is part of this technique, is being searched by the databases as part of this technique. They are participants in direct-to-consumer genetic genealogy databases. And in particular, there are two that permit this technique, the Family Tree DNA database and the GEDmatch database.
Okay.
And those databases have lots of information on their websites about this technique and give their participants the option of opting in or out of having their data searched by the database for law enforcement purposes.
Yeah, that's a ever-expanding world, right? Because there's also the flip side of that where people are not giving up, they're offering their DNA to be analyzed through 23andMe or any of the other DNA analysis to get sort of their background, right? And I'm just curious, customers, do they worry about what's happening with their DNA?
Mm-hmm. You know? So yes, I believe they do. And to be clear, the databases that I mentioned, I mean, their primary purpose is to provide genetic ancestry information and to help individuals who are just researching their family trees.
Yeah.
So IGG is a very different purpose,
Okay.
right? And that's why getting the informed consent of individuals who are opting into this technique is so important.
Yeah, that's great. So where do you see the future of your university and the things that you're doing? Where do you see it going?
So what's next?
What's the future of DNA? What's next?
Well, in terms of our research, we're really interested in understanding defense uses of this technique. So at this point, IGG has been used to help exonerate only 2 individuals, which pales in comparison to its use by law enforcement to identify criminal perpetrators and unidentified human remains. There are over 1,000 of those cases, and they have been cataloged. Compare that number to 2 for defense and exoneration purposes. And so we are really interested in understanding what are the barriers to defense and post-conviction counsel using this technique on behalf of their clients, with an eye to, everyone's in pursuit of justice and wanting to correct any injustices by the system and wrongfully convicting innocent individuals.
Yeah, that's a fantastic path to go. I'm sure there are many people in the world waiting for that that number of 2 to go up to 2,000.
Right.
To really help people. That's really great. Well, thank you so much for sitting down with me, Christi Guerrini.
Guerrini. That's okay, that was close.
Well, thank you very much for stopping by. And
Thank you.
Will we see you at ISHI 36?
Yes, absolutely, yes.
Awesome. Thanks a lot.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.